Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Football Politics, where we discuss the beautiful game known around the world as well as the things surrounding it. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the domestic cups that take place in the top six European nations as defined by UEFA coefficients. So, in order, we'll be going through the English Premier League, La Liga, the Bundesliga, Serie A, Ligue 1, and the Premier Liga. To begin, we're going to start with what has taken place at the beginning of this 2020-2021 season with the UEFA Super Cup, which put together Bayern Munich, who won the UEFA Champions League, versus Sevilla, who won the UEFA Europa League. This is actually going to be the last time that there will only be two tiers in Europe, which we'll discuss another time, the introduction of the UEFA Conference League. Which will take some of those teams from the Europa League and move them into the Europa League. It will also affect some competition, domestic cup competitions, of who will actually be placed where. Normally, they might have gotten a spot in Europa League or not even qualified for any European competition, and this time they may be switched into qualified for specifically the Conference League, UEFA Conference League. So first we're going to take a look at the English Premier League, and they have four that are available to them, four domestic cups or trophies, if you will. The first that we'll take a look at is the FA Cup, which is considered by many to be considered the top world-renowned domestic cup competition, not only just in Europe, but in the world. So for this, you have different tiers within each league, and these tiers constitute different levels within the pyramids of football or soccer in those specific nations. So the Premier League is considered Tier 1. The EFL, or English Football League Championship, is considered Tier 2. The English Football League 1 is considered Tier 3. And the English Football League 2 is considered Tier 4. After that, you start going into the National Conference League, the North and South Conference Leagues, and then a lot more regional leagues after that. So each going further down in tiers based on competition level, professionalism, and availability. In some countries, there may not be as many based on their structure of how it's been set up, as well as the space provided to them. A country is only so big. At one point, there used to be up to 24 tiers in the English Premier League or English Football League system or pyramid. So for the FA Cup specifically, it encompasses Tier 1 all the way down to Tier 10, meaning that even the lowly Tier 10 teams can potentially win the FA Cup, as well as what you'll notice with a lot of these domestic cups, qualify for Europe. Now, the FA Cup, if you win it, you are automatically qualified for the UEFA Europa League. Now, if you've already qualified for that, let's say Arsenal, for instance, was qualified in the league based on their position, and they won the FA Cup, then it would go to the person below them in the league. So that's sort of how that kind of it works. But for those lower teams, it's their only and best chance to try to compete and qualify for Europe. There is actually no reason for those teams not to, unless they have financial reasons where they are not able to compete in Europe. However, under UEFA rules, only the winners of those domestic cups can qualify and enter into those European places. So unfortunately, if a team from a lower tier actually somehow managed to win the FA Cup but was financially unable to compete in Europe, there is a possibility that that spot in the tournament could be forfeited. So and that's something we'll see once we get to La Liga that we'll discuss as well. So as we move forward, there are a lot of preliminary or qualifying rounds until we get to the big rounds. And as rounds move further up, more and more tiers are included. You get all the way up to the round of 64, round of 32, the quarterfinals. The round of 16, then the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and the final. Um, Very recently, with the Wembley Stadium being built in the way it has, the semifinals and final have taken place at Wembley. Now, some have argued that this is taken away from the grandeur of playing the final at Wembley Stadium. However, to help with costs from building the stadium in the first place, a lot of the semifinals now recently have all been played at Wembley as well. So for some, this is actually a big occasion because even if you don't win the semifinal to move on to the final, you still have a chance of playing in Wembley, which is a big honor for many teams, and for some players, a dream come true if they never have the chance to make it into their national team squad, being able to play there. Maybe they have in other teams of the national team, also called like U23, 20s or 18s, moving further down the pecking order based on age restrictions. But for many, that would be the encompassing part of being able to play at Wembley Stadium for that competition. So the FA Cup is one way that you can qualify for Europe. It is considered, like I said, to be the greatest domestic cup competition in the world still by many. Moving further along, we have the EFL Cup, also known for sponsorship reasons as the Carabao Cup. It takes place between tiers 1 and tiers 4, largely regarded as the professional side of the English Football League system. This only encompasses those tier 4 teams, so if you are below that, you are unable to compete. You can't even qualify. There's no entry whatsoever. So for these 4 tiers, it is another cup competition for them to try and win silverware. And recently, it has been now denounced as if you win that cup specifically, you gain entrance into the UEFA Conference League. So again, another chance for a lower team to get to great heights and win some silverware. For other purposes of the bigger teams, some of these cup competitions are not as seen as prestigious enough, and so what they will tend to do is give game time to their second or third string players. Teams or players that have not really pushed into the first team, are more reserves, or are promising young prospects that they want to give them a chance to showcase their skills. Most of the time, these bigger teams can do this because even their second and third string players are still better than the lower tier teams. Unfortunately, a lot of this has to do with financial circumstances, but on a larger scale, it's where these academies are and where a lot of the youth players come into those academies. You have a bigger pool of players to choose from. Now, unfortunately, there's only so many players that can be registered for these competitions, but still, it gives the chance for players not of first team quality to get game time in. And if you're at a larger club and you're making a lot of money, you still want to play football, even if you're not always guaranteed a starting spot in the first team week in and week out. So for many, this gives them a chance. And for the earlier rounds, and this goes to say for as well the FA Cup that we discussed too, it gives them the opportunity to do so because they're still facing lesser teams. As it becomes less and less teams in the competition, it's just not as realistic. Some teams still try to do so, but they end up getting knocked out, and that chance for the silverware that year is altogether lost. It's a win and lose situation. Do you take the chance? Do you not? Most lesser teams don't have a choice. If they want to compete, they put their first team players in and go gung-ho all the way to try and win it. This results in some fantastic matchups because you'll see some of the larger teams actually get knocked off by the minnows. And we call these the giant killings, right? Where a Liverpool gets knocked off by a tier 3 or tier 4 team. out of the blue because they didn't have their first string team players in, and they made some slip ups, and all of a sudden they find themselves one down or two down, and they're not able to come back. Or what is hoped by some is that they can get to a 0-0 draw and it goes to penalties. Now, for the EFL Cup, this is true where it goes to penalties. However, in the FA Cup, for many rounds, there is a replay that happens. Now, for this specific year in COVID-19 circumstances, this has actually been taken away to reduce the schedule that is faced for many teams because their seasons were canceled, postponed, or extended to a time that would actually integrate itself into this current season. So to help alleviate that schedule pressure, there are no longer replays for this specific season. They probably will integrate it back, but that's how it's going to be. But the replays allow that if a team draws in the first leg, or the only match available, then the second match is played at the other team's stadium. So there is a chance for these smaller teams to gain more revenue by being in the competition a little bit longer, as well as also playing another game. For this purpose, if a team loses in that first match, then there is no replay for this. So there are no two-legged affairs like you would see in the UEFA Champions League knockout stages, where you have a home and away. There's no such thing. It's only if in that first match there is a draw. And if there's still a draw after the replay, then there's extended time added on, and then or extra time, and then a possibility of penalties, which does occur and where you see some of those giant killings happen. Because at the end of the day, yes, you could still have a great keeper, but usually you don't study those lower tier teams as much. You usually only focus on the top strikers from the teams in the league at most, or who is your most prominent penalty taker at the situation. But when penalties are taken, it's not just one person you're facing now. You could face the entire team if it were to go that far. But most likely, you face anywhere between 3 to 5 players max. It's very difficult to read that for a goalkeeper. And now with the new addition of goalkeepers having to keep at least 1 foot on their line before the ball is struck, it's very difficult to do, and it's more of a 50-50 coin toss-up at that point of who will go through. Sometimes with the quality of skill, you'll still see the bigger teams go through because they are more confident, they've taken more penalties, and for the goalkeepers, they have better reflexes and are able to cover the goal size a lot easier. We move forward. The third cup competition is obviously the league. Now, this will be for every single league that we go through, so I'll only mention it briefly, but like I said, there is the league that you can still win, and it is obviously considered the biggest trophy between those three. While the FA Cup is still considered very prestigious, the league of Tier 1, English Football League, as well as the top tier for all leagues, is still considered the most important. So the fourth opportunity comes in the form of a Super Cup as well. You'll see it called Super Cup sometimes in some leagues, but for the English Football League or the Premier League, it is called the FA Community Shield or FA Cup Community Shield. And what it does is it pits the league winner versus the FA Cup winner. And how that happens is whoever won the FA Cup has the chance to face the winner of the league, of the English Premier League, the top tier league. So not only do you have a chance to qualify for Europe with the FA Cup, but you have a chance to face the cream of the crop, the leader of the entire English Football League pyramid system in a one-off match. Quite exciting stuff. For some, this is considered not as important because it's just a trophy piece to start off the new season. Some leagues have it a little bit further in the season, but it's still a trophy that can be won by managers and something you can put on your trophy shelf if you are the winner. And the chance to play in that match is also very prestigious too, because you have to have won one of those two competitions to even be in the running to win it, right? There's only two teams that are possible. So that's why the FA Cup, and you'll see from a lot of those other domestic cups, is very important because you have the chance to win a trophy, qualify for Europe, and qualify to win another trophy. Very, very big stuff. So that concludes the English Premier League. We're now going to move on to La Liga. And La Liga only has 3. Now, I could say for the English Premier League and La Liga that there actually are a lot more domestic cups. If you take a look at the English Premier League, there's actually things known as the FA Cup or the FA Base. And for the La Liga, there is the Federation Cup as well. We're going to leave those lower tiered cups alone. We're only going to focus on the biggest domestic cups for those specific leagues. So moving on to La Liga, obviously we have the La Liga league trophy. You win the league, you win that, right? The other one that they have is the Copa del Rey. Now the Copa del Rey again encompasses more than just La Liga itself, the top tier. It actually includes the top 4 leagues, or top tier 4 tiers, top 5, I'm sorry, in Spain. So that includes your La Liga, your Segunda Division B, the Tercera Division, as well as regional league winners and semifinalists of the Copa Federation, which was the other lower tier cup competition. Now, for that purpose, it's included here because we have to discuss who's included to this cup competition. But as you can see, these national trophies, national cup competitions, domestic competitions, are including a vast majority of the teams within the country. It includes so many, again, giving these clubs of lower tier status a chance to be great and win something spectacular to expand their brand and exposure, as well as gain financial stability by improving within the cup competitions. And for those players as well, you have to remember that if you are doing well in a cup competition, not only within your league, you have a greater chance of being scouted and moving to a bigger team, possibly. So for that, it's called the Copa del Rey, or the King's Cup, if you will. And you also get to qualify for the Europa League if you win this, and you get to qualify for the Supercopa de España, or the Spanish Super Cup as well. And that is always pitted against the league winner and the Copa del Rey winner. However, if that is the same person, then it is the runner-up in the league. And that was the same actually for the FA Community Shield as well. If for some reason Liverpool won both the FA Cup and the Premier League, then it would have been Liverpool versus Man City, who consequently also won the EFL Cup. So moving forward, we have what used to be just a one-off match for the Supercopa de España. It has been changed. There is now a new format that has come to Spain, and it now includes the league winner and league runner-up versus the cup winner, the Copa del Rey winner, and the Copa del Rey runner-up, or the finals basically. And they have a semifinal. So you have the league winner versus the runner-up in the Copa del Rey, and you have the Copa del Rey winner versus the league runner-up. There's a semifinal, and then there is a final to pit them against each other. Some argue that this diminishes winning the Copa del Rey to even be qualified for the um, Supercopa de España, and in turn, this was very well much documented by Valencia fans for that very reason, because that was the year it changed format wise, and while they would have had a chance to compete in the Supercopa de España in the one-off match, they did not actually make the final and were eliminated in the semi-final of that new format. So those are the three domestic cup competitions for La Liga. And Real Madrid won the league. It was Barcelona in the previous year who had won it, or I'm sorry, who had, was runners-up against Valencia. So those were the four teams, so to speak, who were involved. This year, unfortunately, the Copa del Rey final was suspended, and it has been. And because there was no official winner declared, that spot for Spain in Spanish football was forfeited for the Europa League. So they actually have one less team there now. And it was Atletico Bilbao versus Real Sociedad. Now, for the purposes of the Supercopa de España, that can still happen because we know who will be in it, but that final still needs to happen for placement purposes, right? If we just have Atletico Bilbao versus Real Sociedad, we don't know who was the winner and who was the loser. So we don't know who should have the top seed and the lower seed for the semifinal. We do obviously know that it will be Real Madrid and Barcelona from the league side, right? Real Madrid won and Barcelona were runners-up in the league. So moving forward, now we look at the Bundesliga, the German league, and obviously there is the Bundesliga if you win that, and that was Bayern Munich this year. Then you had Dortmund as runners-up. The other cup competition, or the domestic national cup competition, is the DFB Pokal, which that was won also by Bayern Munich. In the circumstance that a same team wins both, in Germany they have just the league runner-up face off against the league winner. So that is why in the third domestic cup competition, the DFL Super Cup, it was Bayern Munich versus Borussia Dortmund, which actually just occurred this week with Bayern Munich taking it over Borussia Dortmund. So they have now won the treble of trophies, the Bundesliga, the DFB Pokal, and the DFL Super Cup, as well as the UEFA Champions League and the UEFA Super Cup. They have now 5 trophies this season, and there is still one to be had to make it a perfect 6 for 6 with the Club World Cup. We'll see how that actually is formatted, how it will play out with current circumstances to see how that tournament happens. So those are those 3. For the DFB Pokal, you also get to qualify for Europe, just like you have for other leagues. But this includes tiers 1 through 4, with the 4th being the regional teams. You have 2. Bundesliga and 3. Liga being division or tiers 2 and tier 3 that compete. Those are the lower leagues. Now, something that you'll see, not necessarily in the English football league system, but in La Liga, the Bundesliga, you'll even see it in a few other leagues as well. They have reserve teams, and those reserve teams are also very good. The thing is, while you used to be able to also have your reserve team enter into those domestic cup competitions, that is no longer the case. At one point, Bayern 2 faced Bayern 1, basically, in the cup competition. That is no longer the case. They sort that out. Some teams get just a bye or is filled by another team. But that is something to note because as you look further and further down the tiers, you will actually see or come across reserve or second teams. This is different from your second team for your first team in the top league, right? And your reserve team as well. The other thing that you will notice is that there is only a certain height or limit for how high a reserve team can go. Most of the time, it is either the tier or league right below the first team, or two below. For the Bundesliga's case, Bayern 2 can only achieve success in 3. Liga. And I apologize if that's not how that league is pronounced specifically or said, but that is how I see it. So, but yeah, while they can win 3. Liga and they would normally be promoted to 2. Bundesliga, they do not, because they are a second or team. So we move forward and we go to the Serie A, where we have 3 cup competitions as well. You have the Coppa Italia, again, their domestic national cup competition, the Scudetto, or the Serie A League Cup, right, or a trophy for who wins the league, and you have the Supercoppa Italia. So this one is a little bit different than previous leagues that we've discussed. So the Coppa Italia, obviously you get to qualify for Europe here, and it includes tiers 1 through 4, essentially all of the professional teams, just like in the English Football League, and they are considered Serie A, Serie B, Serie C, and Serie D, respectively. They get to pit it out against each other. And as you'll notice with most of these formats of these competitions, it starts where the lower teams face each other and they knock out, and then you add the next highest tier, and then they face each other, and then you add the next tier, and then finally you add the top tier in there. In some cup competitions, you have where they only face the tier that they're up against, and up to a certain point, and then it's an open draw virtually, where they can face anybody who is available. But sometimes when those tiers come in, they usually or sometimes face each other. It narrows down the bigger teams a lot quicker, so they did not dominate their domestic cup, and there's not even a single chance for some of those lower tiers to elevate and climb the ranks of the competition. It's always nice to see some of those minnows get all the way up into, say, a round of 16 or even a quarterfinal. Rarely do you ever see them reach a semifinal, and hardly ever hear of any reaching a final. Maybe before the modern age we are in now, with technology the way it is, the financial sector of teams, but unfortunately that's the way it is. For the Supercoppa Italiana, it is the league winner versus the cup winner. Now, Juventus won the league last year, and or the Scudetto, and Napoli won the Coppa Italia. If by chance Juve were to win both, it is the league winner versus the cup runner-up. What could happen is you basically have, and what will happen actually, is you will actually have a repeat of that, the Super Cup, or the Coppa Italia, I'm sorry. So in the Supercoppa Italiana, it could just be a repeat of the Coppa Italia. There is no league runner-up that faces off here. So that is how that works out. Luckily for us, we had 2 different winners. So we had Napoli winning the Coppa Italia and Juve winning the league. So they will face off against each other. However, the Supercoppa Italiana is yet to be determined as when it will actually happen because of scheduling purposes. We move on to what could be considered by most the most complex, and I have to say the most educational I've ever been on in learning about a domestic league. I could not believe how dense and complex Ligue 1 was for their cup competitions. But as you'll see in a moment, or as you'll hear in a moment, why that is. So in Ligue 1, they also used to actually have 4 cup competitions. They had the Coupe de France, the Coupe de Ligue, obviously the Ligue 1, and the Trophée des Champions, or the trophy, the champion of trophies, or the Trophy of Champions, rather. Sorry, their Super Cup of the competition. Now, amazingly, PSG, they won all 3 of those competitions. They have not actually, as far as I know, had the Trophy de Champion, so that is yet to be seen. But PSG actually won the Coupe de France, the Coupe de Ligue, and Ligue 1. So they won their treble of domestic trophies. They did not win the 4th one because it has not happened yet. Will they? I don't know. But like the English Premier League, where you have, or the English Football League, I should say, you have the FA Cup, the EFL Cup, and the league, right? France has this. However, for scheduling purposes, again, one of these competitions was suspended indefinitely. So we don't know when it will come back. We suspect that next season it will return. But as of right now, it is not going to happen this season, and that is the Coupe de Ligue. The Coupe de Ligue is like the EFL Cup, where it encompasses tiers. It includes tiers 1 through 3. So basically, still the professional teams within France. So that one has been suspended right now, again, to alleviate scheduling purposes. There would have been too many games going on. The league has obviously still going on and has started. What is also still going on is by far one of the most complex things I've ever seen. But before we get there, let's talk about the Coupe de Ligue, the one that is no longer going to be here. How that happens is something unheard of by me, but so we'll leave the Coupe de Ligue back until we return to it. But it is essentially the knockout tournament there. Moving forward, we're going to look at the Coupe de France, which is so complex. I could not believe it. But the reason why it's this complex is because not only does it include the mainland teams in France, it includes the overseas teams who are of French nationality, as well as the territories. If those have clubs, they are included and can compete in the Coupe de France. And for lack of a better way of phrasing this, there are over 9 stages to this competition. The first 6 are just for these qualifying and eliminating rounds for the overseas teams, the territory teams, to kind of get their eliminations to happen. And you'll see that in round 6, or I'm sorry, round 5, basically, tiers 3 through 5 will enter in rounds 3 through 5. Apologize. So so you have the first 2 rounds that'll occur. In round 3, you'll have like tier 5 go in, and then you'll have round 4 where tier 4 teams will come in, and then you'll have round 5 where you'll have tier 3 teams come in. So you'll get just a melting pot of teams going on, and they do their best to have this work out this way because of obviously the travel expense it would cost for an overseas team to face a mainland team right off the bat many a times, and also for the unfair advantage that would accrue as well. So for those first 6 rounds, that's how the competition takes place. It seems like a normal just knockout tournament, but there are stages in which lower tiers in the French National League occur. Once we get to round 7, there is a group stage. Now, this is not like your typical group stage where you face each team in the group. No, this is grouped based on your locality, your territory, to make it easier for these teams to compete. So in Group 7, this is where Ligue 2 joins, and there are up to 10 groups that happen. And in these groups, it's single elimination here, and you move on from there. So there could be 6 to 8 teams per group at this point, but then 3 or 4 will move on from that group because once you're in that group, then between those teams is who's going to face who. Then we move on to stage 8, where there are 6 groups now this time, and now and the same thing occurs where you're grouped by your geographical location, and you eliminate one team and then you move on from your group. So again, there could be 2 to 6 and 1 to 3 or so could move forward onto the next stage. So stage 9, and this is where we get into 64 teams remaining. 64. So all of that, all stage or rounds, right, that you have there, 1 through 8, was just to get to this point in the tournament. And that's because of how many territories and overseas locations that France occupies or has nationalities occurred in. So once we get to the 64 teams in stage 9, we are then again divided into 4 groups. And this is finally where Ligue 1 actually joins the competition. So they have what you could say is an unfair advantage going in so far, but realistically it makes sense for them to join at this point because you want the stronger teams. You don't want huge blowouts because we have to be realistic in the fact that these Ligue 1 teams have a decided advantage in financial capabilities and team strength, where it just would not be good football to have right off the bat like that. Like I said, that's why sometimes they have the lower teams face up each other, and then you add the stronger tiers, and then you eliminate more from those, and then you have where you can see the minnows rise up in the competition. So once we get to those 4 groups with Ligue 1 joining, it is round 32 and onward. Is the last time there's groups, and the 32 teams, will face off, and it will go into the round of 16, the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and then the final. And yes, PSG actually won that as well. So quite a lengthy affair. Kudos to the French Football Federation, the FFF, Triple F, right, for organizing such a tournament. I was blown away when I was doing my research on it, and I hope it was explained as clear as possible by myself. So those are those competitions. And then there's the Trophée des Champions, where you have the league winner versus the Coupe de France, which is the huge national domestic trophy that we just discussed. And if it's the same where it's PSG, then it will be the league runners-up, which will then be, as you'll find out, it'll be PSG versus Marseille, because Marseille were finished second in the suspended league, as it were. So yeah, there's Ligue 1 in a gigantic nutshell. But I thought it was very different and unique compared to some of the other domestic cups and how they're formatted. So really cool stuff. We finally move on to the Premier League, the Portuguese league. And they, surprisingly enough, have 4 cup competitions as well. Not as complex as Ligue 1's, but still 4 to be had. They have the Taça de Portugal, which actually just happened for the final that we were discussing in our last top 10, the top 10 video, where Porto won that over Benfica. That one has tiers 1 through 4 in the Portuguese league system, football league system, that qualify. And obviously, if you win that, you qualify for the Europa League. There's the Taça da Liga, which only encompasses the top 2. So you have the Premier Liga and the Liga Pro. Those are the only teams and only 2 tiers that can qualify. A very select group there. And there is in that one specifically is quite a similar aspect from Ligue 1, where we see that in the third round there are 4 groups of 4, and when this happens, it is different from the Coupe de France, where it's actually a group stage, where each team will actually face the other, and there will be 3 games. So it'll be 4 groups of 4, right? So 16 teams remaining at this point, and they will face each other once, respectively. That at least each team got 1 home match based on the draw selection and where each match occurs. Whoever is the leader of that group moves on. So automatically you go from 16 teams to 4, and that's it. It's actually quite difficult, I think, for those lower teams to compete once they get to that third round here. But we are just talking about tiers 1 and tiers 2. So it is still a fair competition that you only have tiers 1 and 2. But for it being a group stage situation like that, it does seem a little bit more stacked in the favor of the bigger teams. I guess the only other thing you could say there is that it is 1 or 3 matches, not 6. So you're not facing home and away, home and away, home and away, where you'd clearly see who's the winner, like you do in the UEFA Champions League, right? If you're dead last in that group, you deserve dead last. Whereas you may not have deserved last in this third round of the Taça de Liga, but you got a away win, or you got a home win in that one-off match, and that puts you in that top spot in the group, and you moved on. Because once those 4 group winners move on, it is now essentially just a semifinal again, and then it goes to a final. And this year's final was won by Braga. So a great job to them for winning that. And then there is the Supertaça Candido de Oliveira. I hope I pronounced that correctly for everybody out there. And that is their Super Cup. That is where the league winners are versus the cup. And as we'll see, it's actually similar to Serie A here, where if by some chance the winners of the league also win the Taça de Portugal, then you will see a rematch basically of the Taça de Portugal final, and this year it will be Porto versus Benfica for that. So we don't know when that will be. We suspect that it will be in December, from what I've seen so far, but it's a tentative schedule for when it will take place. But it'll be another interesting match because we still have a few matchups, right? We have La Liga's Supercopa de España to sort out, as well as their Copa del Rey, actually, right? There's still Atletico Bilbao versus Real Sociedad before you can have the semifinal matchup for the Supercopa de España. We've seen the Community Shield happen already between Arsenal and Liverpool, with Arsenal beating Liverpool. So that one's completed. And just this week, the DFL Super Cup between Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund happened, where Bayern Munich took that one. The Serie A still have to finish up their Supercoppa Italia between Napoli and Juve, whenever that will be. Ligue 1 still have to do their Trophée des Champions between PSG and Marseille. And the Premier Liga will still have to have their Supertaça Candido de Oliveira. I think it's just fun to say, really, between Porto and Benfica. I hope you learned something. I hope that it didn't just go in one ear and out the other. It was very educational for me to research and learn. I hope you learned something new that you didn't before. If you would like to learn more of the lower leagues, let me know down in the comments below. Who do you think will win those remaining Super Cups for the leagues? And who do you think will win this year's domestic cups? What did you find the most surprising to learn about format-wise between these different leagues? If you're unknown to the English football league system, did you realize that it included tiers 1 through 10? If you are unknown to French football, did you realize that it was including all of those territories, overseas and mainland clubs to compete and have these different group stages occurring throughout. It's been a great time, a blast for me to discuss these things with you. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. If you did like it even more than that, I would encourage you to press subscribe. It helps the channel grow and encourages me to know that I am putting out good content for you. Thank you so much for even just watching this video today. I hope wherever you are, you have a great morning, day, evening, night. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. I forgot to mention at the end of this video that I'm going to leave a link in the description below, and it will actually detail a lot of this out in a little bit more of a cleaner fashion, perhaps, in written form that I discovered from the Bundesliga's website. It may be in English, so you may have to translate it if you do not speak it or cannot read it as well. But it was very informational for me, and it discusses even some of those lower league nations that if you'd like to, we can discuss further in another video. Take care.